Many organizations are actively thinking about, have built, or are building their internal developer portals today. Many view developer portals as a way to drive productivity and efficiency. One of the ways that we think about developer portals is, in many cases, the lens of which we're building the developer portal in the first place. So if I'm a platform engineer or a developer experience team, I'm thinking about how to provide the functionality that our team is building to developers efficiently through a developer portal. But if we take a step back and think about it from a product mindset, the first thing we should ask ourselves is, what do developers want from their developer portals? That is the persona that we're all solving for at the end of the day, and I think is missed in the conversation in many cases about developer portals. And so what we did is we went out and did a survey of tons of developers just to understand, hey, what exactly do you expect from a developer portal? What are the problems you're facing today? And can and how will a developer portal even help? And that's what we want to share today is a summary of our findings, synthesis of how we think about developer portals as a result of this survey, and learnings that you can take away from as a result of this learning as well. And so, quick introduction of myself. My name is Ganesh. I'm one of the co-founders and CTO at Cortex. Cortex is an internal developer portal. We were started about 4 years ago. I was previously working as a software engineer in the fintech space, and I had the fortune or misfortune, depending on how you see it, to be part of the team that pulled the first service out of the monolith, and then help out and define our initial production readiness standards, our templating and scaffolding and self-service, driving some of those initiatives across the organization. And by the time I left, we had a couple hundred services, and it was quite a challenge to maintain. I remember at one point I got paged in the middle of the night, and it was for a service I had never touched. It was named after a TV show that I had no idea. And you can imagine the chaos that unfolds at that time and not understanding, what I'm dealing with in the middle of the night. And that was a moment in which I said, hey, there's got to be a better solution for this. And we started working on the service catalog, more than 4 years ago now. And eventually it has grown into this developer portal, which is now a very exciting market and space to be developing in, particularly from my own lens of being an engineer previously. We recently just raised our Series B, raising a 35 million Series B, and so very excited to be working with tons of great organizations as well, from everything from TripAdvisor to e-commerce companies as well to larger organizations, of course, FinServe, other enterprise categories, and fast-growing startups, kind of just all across the board, and seeing developer portals that they've built from scratch and migrated off of to helping them build a developer portal for the first time. And so excited to take all those learnings and combine that with what we've seen and heard from developers as part of our survey and share that today. So for today's agenda, we're going to be going over a couple of different things. The first is what are the changes in the tech landscape that have resulted in this desire for developer portals in the first place? Why do we fully believe that developer portals are actually solving a market problem or a problem from developers? And what are we seeing in the market that gives us that confidence? The second piece is going to be about developer portals. Why developer portals? How do they help? What is the theory behind them? And then finally, what we're hearing from developers in order to improve their work and how that ties back into the developer portal as well. So when you think about the last 5+ years, tech has obviously changed drastically, and it's made us more efficient. And some great examples of that are microservices, Kubernetes. I know this is a contentious topic, but for the most part, this tooling, this platformization has helped us move more independently, enable parallel work, increase scalability, make teams more independent, more autonomous, which in theory has made us more efficient. Obviously, cloud hosting has made storage and compute cheaper. It's easier to go and spin up something. Cloud costs have generally driven down in the individual unit economics. And it's just made it easier to spin up new software. And finally, there's just tons more tooling out there, right? Developers have all kinds of tools at their fingertips that are supposed to help them ship even faster than before. And so in aggregate, engineering and tech modernization has made us more efficient to a point. Microservices and Kubernetes obviously enable parallel work, but at the same time, that means we can do lots of parallel work, making it even harder to understand ownership and what's out there, what the ecosystem even looks like. And so it's creating this kind of complexity in the ecosystem that's starting to slow us down. Cloud hosting obviously made things easier, cheaper, faster, And now we spun up a bunch of things and we're paying for stuff that we don't even realize is still out there. And finally, from a tooling standpoint, we built tons of tooling and infrastructure and all kinds of great products out there to help us build faster. But now that means there's even more context switching, there's more process, there's more noise. Things are getting thrown at them from all different directions. And so the efficiencies are starting to wane off as well. And so while in aggregate we are more efficient, we're starting to see that slow down, and we're seeing inefficiencies as a result of the changes that happen in the market ecosystem over time. And so, when you think about the tools that are in the landscape today, they generally help with some combination of shipping faster or shipping better. But it's very rare that a tool kind of does both, right? Those are two very distinct problems at its core. And so you think about products like APM, monitoring, DevOps platforms, they're really focused on performance, right? It's are we shipping better? What is the quality? What is the reliability? And in those cases, it doesn't really give us context about what is that component I'm monitoring? What is that component I'm shipping? How do they all interact with each other? Why do they interact with each other? And so those tools aren't really driving, velocity in the same way, but they're driving quality. They're driving that kind of understanding and improvement across the engineering ecosystem. Then there's tons of tools like engineering intelligence and engineering metrics. You've probably seen a lot of these around things like developer productivity metrics, PR cycle time, DORA metrics. And these kinds of things help us assess bottlenecks in our process, right? And so they're not so much helping us ship better, but they can help us ship faster, assuming you're able to act on that information. For the most part, those metrics are generally static. Most people aren't making any decisions as a result of seeing, hey, my PR cycle time is going down. Okay, cool. What now? And so in some ways it's meant to drive quality, but isn't really doing so. It's supposed to drive velocity a little bit, but isn't really doing so. It's kind of helping assess the productivity in different ways. And then finally, you kind of have more of the static kind of daily workflow systems, whether it's Git, whether it's Jira, it's Confluence. These are all enablers of paths to speedy production, but it doesn't give you visibility into, are you doing things the right way? Are you shipping the right way? Are you getting things into production the right way? How do those things all interact with each other? And so, those tools are not necessarily driving quality or velocity. They're driving quality definitely in the sense that they're helping us follow standard processes and ways of building, but they're not helping us necessarily accelerate in the same way that we hope that they would. And so when we think about kind of what's the gap in the ecosystem, it's really about how do we connect information from all these different tools to help us make sense of it, right? It's like each of these things is completely disparate systems. You might have a Confluence page talking about a runbook that affects something in your APM tool, and that APM tool is monitoring something that was released out of a Git repository, and that Git repository has a pipeline attached to it, and that was built by some team that's being tracked by engineering metrics. And there's not really any way to kind of bring all this information together. There's no cohesive entity graph that makes it clear what the context is and the ability to enforce standards using information across that entire stack. Each of these things are kind of siloed pieces of knowledge across the ecosystem. And so this is exactly where internal developer portals can really help. So first off, IDPs basically help organizations ensure that people are building things the right way. Are we meeting standards? Are we giving people golden paths? Are we shipping, operating, releasing, monitoring in the right way, in the standard way? And so when you think about that, what are the kind of commonalities of a system of an internal developer portal? There's three core things that we see are must-haves. The first thing is being a system of record. If your internal developer portal is not able to kind of tell you what is out there and connect information across different tools, then good luck. System of record is extremely important. This includes things like ownership. It includes things like information about APM and monitoring and alerting and Git and so on and so forth. The second piece is, okay, now I've collected all this information about my ecosystem. What now? Well, with that data, you can now assess against core standards. So where are we today? Where are we trying to get to? How do we get there? The developer portal, if it is a system record, should give you the capability to understand that information in better ways. And then finally, once you've assessed your data and you understand where you are today and where you're trying to go, then you want to be able to provide self-service capabilities. So can we make developers even more productive by giving them the tooling to ship faster, to build new things? And so the developer portals are kind of a broad part of the SDLC, right? It's starting from intent to actually creating something and building it, to getting into production, to operating it, to monitoring it. And in order to do all that, these are the 3 capabilities that you really require. And so breaking that down a little bit, what do developers want from their IDPs? We kind of talked a little bit about the problems in the market. We talked about the issues in the current existing tech ecosystem. We talked about what we think IDPs are and what do developers actually want out of their IDPs. Is any of that even true? And so a little bit about the survey and the methodology. So we went out and we surveyed 50 developers and engineers who have either used or are looking at IDPs and asked them what they wanted, what their current pain points are, what their focus areas are. And so these are not our customers, but these were just engineers in the market that we reached out to help with this understanding of IDPs. And so there are 3 key takeaways that we saw. The first, it's becoming very hard to find information. Developers still have no way to assess context, to understand what's out there. Information is siloed and broken. Prioritization is a major problem. With all the noise and all the information that's out there, developers don't know exactly what they should be working on. What is the priority? Is it the tech debt? Is it reliability? Is it the feature stuff I'm working on? And then finally, templates are the #1 requested feature of an IDP. And we're going to dive into this in a little bit more detail. So starting at the top, finding information is a pain. There's tons of information out there, whether it's just the hundreds and hundreds of microservices and libraries and batch job and web components and whatnot, and then all the information about each of those, like where are they deployed, who owns them, where can I contact them, what teams are out there, where is this service being monitored, what tooling is there. All this information is scattered across tons of different tools. And so you'll see here that the vast majority of developers agree that it is impossible to find information about services and resources and infrastructure and how all those things connect to each other. And what this means and the impact of this is that it makes onboarding extremely difficult because people can't find information and ramp up quickly. Incident management is challenging. If you're getting alerted in the middle of the night like me, how do you figure out what's out there? How do you figure out context? How do you find information? And then even down to being able to develop software and complete your tasks. If I'm being tasked to work on a certain part of the product or a certain feature area and it interacts with somebody else, who do I talk to about that? Where do I find that information? And Confluence is great and it has tons of information, but it isn't contextual. It doesn't really tell me the knowledge that I need in that moment. And so finding information is a pain and it has tons of downstream effects. The second thing, and that we talked about, and we're going to break this down into a couple pieces. The first thing is prioritization. People want more clarity around prioritization. And the vast majority of people, again, agree that prioritization is difficult, it's subjective, there's no clarity around why a certain thing has been prioritized, especially when it comes to the many different pillars and facets of building software in a modern ecosystem. And this is made even worse because of noise, right? There's tons of tools telling you things to do, and that's making it difficult for the vast majority of developers to make decisions. You have monitoring and alerting tools telling you that things are breaking or alerts are firing. You have security tools telling you things and vulnerabilities and things that you should be focusing on. Code quality metrics are in your face. Productivity metrics. Jira, your product manager is obviously coming at you with feature requests. How do I understand across all these different tools, what do I do? When do I do it? What is the context? Why should I be working on a certain thing? How do I prioritize? And the amount of noise that all these tools are generating just making it harder and harder for developers to stay on top of everything. And then the third thing that we're hearing from developers is that they want templates. When we ask people to rank order the features of an IDP, and these were kind of just hypothetical features of an IDP, what they told us was self-service, by far the #1 thing, outside of task prioritization. The ability to build and productionalize new services, new infrastructure, obviously platform teams, developer experience teams, SRE teams, security teams, everyone is coming at developers with tons of requirements on, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is what the definition of good is. It's like, okay, well, if I'm spinning up a new project, how do I follow those practices from day one? And so self-service and templating is the best way of doing that because you can give developers a single or few golden paths that they can follow to get something into production in a much easier way. And so people really believe that an IDP should start at the moment of intent in the SDLC about thinking about, hey, what am I going to build? What capabilities are available for me that I can use very quickly to spin up something fresh without copy pasting a bunch of code and following our golden paths all in one. How can you make it easy for me to do my job as a developer? And templating is kind of the most important thing that we're hearing from them as well. And so with that all said, I want to talk a little bit about Cortex and how we can help developer experience improve and do that through the IDP. So first and foremost, Cortex really takes the view of actionability, right? When you think about an IDP, it's not just about information. What we just heard is that developers want to be able to do things. They want to understand what they should be taking action on. It's about prioritization. It's about self-service. And so actionability and driving active progress is one of the key components of our developer portal. And so with a system of record, it starts with obviously the common language. So tons of integrations out of the box with a very flexible data model. Being able to run scorecards and checks against all of your infrastructure, all of your services, and define those kinds of standards that you care about across organization. And then third, through self-service. So giving people the ability to drive action through self-service against the initiatives that they care about. And so the IDP approach that we've taken is really developer-centric and giving you the tools to build an IDP the developers can then make the most sense of, drive action, and improve productivity and efficiency that way. And so we're going to break this down into a little bit more detail because I think this is super important when you think about an IDP and how it's supposed to work to drive that developer value. So the first thing is a system of record. The approach that we've taken is that we have over 50 integrations out of the box. And the reason this is important is because your system of records shouldn't replicate information you have in other systems. An IDP shouldn't be a replacement for all your tools. Rather, it should bring those tools together and increase context. The reason you bought those tools or deployed those tools in the first place is because they have value. And so your Workday is your source of truth for teams and team hierarchy. Your Sneak is a source of truth for vulnerabilities. Slack is your messaging tool. GitHub is your code repository. And so the system of records should be able to pull information from all those tools in very automated ways. And so the way we built this is that we can automatically discover relationships between all these different tools to reduce the amount of manual overhead you have to do to create value. And so these integrations come in and it's extremely powerful to be able to pull that into the catalog because it shows things like auto-syncing information. And so the moment a developer opens up their catalog and they open up a service, we're collecting tons of information from different integrations. So we can show you who's on call for the service, the current health of the service, code quality, security, vulnerabilities, information about where it's deployed, what containers are running, up-to-date ownership coming from your identity providers. And so by building these integrations and making them native, we're able to discover information and make that information make more sense. So rather than a bunch of distinct plugins or screens that show you a bunch of information from different tools, different tools are useful, but how do we correlate all the information and drive action as a result of, just more automation, more value from each of those different tools? We're also able to pull in things like dependencies. So through our integrations, we can create a dependency graph between all of your services, your infrastructure. And so again, you'll see a lot of focus here on our automation. How can we help you build a system record? And then how can we help you keep it up to date through automation, through automatically discovering information, while still giving the flexibility to model your data model the way you want, add your own custom data, your custom fields, and build your system of record that way. The second thing is querying capabilities. So you've put all this information now inside of Cortex. How do you extract that data? Tons of different ways, and one really powerful way is our query builder. And so imagine you've connected all these integrations, you're pushing in all this data from different tools, you have ownership information. Now, immediately what happens is people say, before we had a service catalog and a system of record, we didn't even know what questions we wanted to ask. But now, all of a sudden, we have many questions we want to ask and questions we didn't realize we wanted to ask. And so you can imagine a platform or infra team might come in and say, we want to get a list of all the services that have a dependency on a database that is marked as containing PII, but the database doesn't have replication or encrypted backups. Okay, well, that's a really powerful question that connects data from different integrations. Or I might say something like, when Log4j hit, hey, give me a list of all the services that are affected by CVE star and are still running an outdated version of Log4j and haven't been deployed in the last 24 hours. Well, the great thing is with Cortex, you can actually ask those kinds of questions using Cortex query language, which is the capability of querying all this data using the language that we build that abstracts away all the data that's in the catalog and making that exposable in different ways. The second capability, and we'll talk about this, is action. How do we prioritize action? So one great example of this is a developer homepage. So if I'm a developer, I log into Cortex and I immediately get a bunch of information like, am I currently on call or am I going on call soon? What are my open PRs? What are reviews that are assigned to me? What are my Jira tickets? The services that I own and their current health, but also prioritized action items. So if you have things like scorecards or best practices and standards, how do we give developers a very clear list of, hey, these are the most important things you should be working on right now out of all the different things that are out there that people are telling you to do. So automatic prioritization of things, as well as notifications through Slack and Teams and other kind of chat ops tools, being able to go and nudge developers and say, hey, by the way, here's the thing you should be looking at. Here's some things that are on your plate. And so kind of driving action through the developer portal versus having them come into the developer portal all the time. The second thing I was talking about this, and you've heard me mention this a lot, is scorecards. Scorecards are extremely powerful ways of driving things like best practices, standards, migrations. So think automating your massive production readiness checklist that's probably living in a Confluence page or a spreadsheet somewhere, automating security standards and security scoring, running compliance initiatives, running package upgrades and migrations to different platforms, migrating off of CI/CD tool 1 to CI/CD tool 2, all these kinds of manual things that are that exist in your organization today that are driving toil, not just for developers, but the people that are running those initiatives as well. And so when you think about scorecards, it's a way to use that query language we were just talking about to build rule sets and gamify best practices. So I can create a production readiness scorecard that's fully customized and automated that includes things like, at the basic bronze level, I expect that every service has an owner, it has a README file. In the middle tier, I expect that you have reasonable code quality metrics. I assume that you're running automated unit testing, and you have an actual on-call rotation with multiple escalation levels. And the gold standard, or the most mature services, are meeting their vulnerabilities on time. They have reasonable MTTR. They're tracking and monitoring their SLOs. And all this information can come from the integrations that we talked about, as well as custom metrics that you can pipe into Cortex. And so build your own scorecard, track your own migrations, automate away the toil and manual efforts, and drive that action that way. On the flip side, we also give engineering leadership and executives reporting to understand, hey, what is the current state of the business? What is the current state of our engineering organization? So while scorecarding drives action for developers and gives them clear visibility into what they should be working on, we can also give leadership visibility into, hey, where are we as an organization? Are we trending in the right way? Are our services actually becoming more mature? Are we following the standards that we care about? What are the areas of the business that maybe have more risk? Are there parts of or functions that have more vulnerabilities or more issues? How do you break that down? How do you make data-driven decisions without that kind of visibility into your organization, into your services, into your infrastructure? And so the out-of-the-box reporting is an extremely critical aspect of a developer portal, because otherwise you're not solving for a key persona, which is the engineering leadership that cares about the data in the catalog, but in a different way, in a different slice and dice format. And the last couple of things here are self-service. And so one capability that Cortex provides is a scaffolder. So being able to spin up new services from scratch. We've built this on Cookie Cutter, which is an open source framework for creating boilerplate, automating boilerplate generation. Obviously, in your IDP, you can use any kind of templating tool, but we found that building off an open source framework is a powerful way of tapping into the ecosystem and giving back as well. And so you can give developers golden paths that say, hey, I want to create a new Spring Boot service. Developer comes in, they click a template, fill out the form, and we will create the Git repository, generate the code, add it to the service catalog. So kind of complete the entire end-to-end flow, and giving you the capability to improve consistency, improve standardization. And the way we like to think about it is giving teams autonomy, but with guardrails. And so now you can tell developers, hey, that scorecard that we shipped around production readiness, by the way, if you use this template to spin up your new service, you're going to get an 80%, you're going to get a silver score on that scorecard because you're already getting that stuff for free. We've done that for you. And so now you're creating a feedback loop within your developer portal that says, here's what good is, here's how you can go and do that really easily, and then monitor that over time and make sure that people are kind of following that ecosystem as well. The second side of self-service is actions. So the ability to kind of trigger events outside of the developer portal, whether that's triggering a CI/CD pipeline, provisioning infrastructure, whatever external system you might have. Actions are kind of like a low code, no code way of building these kinds of payloads and giving developers like a simple form UI that they can use to trigger things outside of the system as well. And then the last thing here before I talk about just IDPs as a whole and like how do we think about people and organizations and the way they should be moving through the portal and all these features, the last thing I want to touch on is plugins. Cortex is a really unique plugin system where you can obviously get all the magic that we provide out of the box with our integrations and the nice UI and the self-service capabilities. But on top of that, if you want to build your own capabilities, you still can. And so the idea is, hey, let us help you get 80% of the way there with the functionality and the integrations. So you're not just building plugins for integrations, you're building plugins that are custom to your organization. And so you can build your own React TypeScript plugins and embed them inside of Cortex across different pages, letting you do things like build your own release management UI directly inside of the service catalog, build a single portal for your Kubernetes control plane, anything that you might have internal tools for or orchestrating things, bring those inside your developer portal through the plugin system. So it's extremely flexible and just gives you the capability to build on top of the platform. And this is the very last slide that I have here. I wanted to wrap up just by talking about, how have we seen the most successful organizations adopt IDPs in the first place? We talked about, what do developers want, what an IDP should have. But when we think about the rollout and adoption of an IDP, what does that look like? And, because IDPs are pretty new, we could ask this question all the time. And I figured it would be helpful to just talk a little bit about our most successful customers. Like obviously we've seen a ton of IDP rollouts go really, really well and some that didn't go so well. And so what are the commonalities and mistakes? The thing that we like to think about is where should you even start on your IDP journey? We really believe that the first area of focus should be information. What information is out there? What services are out there? Who owns what? What is the accountability? What infrastructure is there? How do they all interact with each other? Collect information. Because how can you optimize and build self-serve experiences if you don't know what's even out there in the first place? Once you have information, then you want to set a North Star. So where are we today? Where are we trying to get to across different pillars, whether that is production readiness standards, service maturity standards, reliability, security, productivity standards. You want to assess your baseline, because if you're building a developer portal, you want to know if you've actually made an impact. And how do you know if you made an impact if you don't know where you started? And so you want to start by assessing those minimum requirements and figuring out where are we today. Once you know where we are today, then you can start prescribing action. So you can tell developers, you can tell other teams, hey, with this developer portal, what we found is that we have gaps in X, Y, and Z areas. This is what we're going to be investing in, and this is what we want people to be working on. And so now you can start prioritizing action for your developers so that they know what they should be focused on as well. And finally, the outcome of all this is enabling and optimizing experiences. So let's say you really believe and want to drive production readiness standards, and you're seeing friction in certain areas. Maybe you're seeing friction in people setting up SLOs, or maybe you're seeing friction in people spinning up infrastructure that follows your best practices. Well, now you can see that and then provide self-serve experiences that are highly tailored to the problems that you see. So instead of jumping directly to self-serve experiences, by cataloging information, by assessing the current state of the world, you can really invest your time and energy into things that you know are going to drive an impact based on the data that you've collected. And then finally, as you start building the self-serve experiences, then you can start optimizing that experience. So personalized experiences, personalized dashboard, automating things away, building, maybe some things don't even have to be self-serve. Maybe they should be handled for you behind the scenes. And so you can start optimizing those experiences and building very custom experiences for developers based on what you've seen across the organization. And this kind of creates a feedback loop, because then now you're building self-serve, you're optimizing experience. Excuse me. As you can tell, I get very excited about this. You can start optimizing experiences, and then you assess the new baseline, and you figure out where you are, and then you figure out where you want to go, and then you build more experiences on top of that, and then you optimize it, and so on and so forth. And now you've really created a feedback loop. It's like a flywheel effect in your IDP, where you're continuously measuring and assessing and making changes and capturing the impact and tweaking things. Now, all of a sudden, you've created adoption, you've created value, you're driving productivity, and this is the way we really see organizations adopt IDPs successfully. And so with that, I hope you learned something today in this presentation about developer portals, what developers are looking for from their developer portals, a little bit about Cortex, and if not Cortex, just how we really believe a developer portal should work in order to drive the most value, and then finally how to adopt a developer portal to make it valuable for developers at the end of the day. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out to me. My email is on my LinkedIn. My name, again, is Ganesh. I'm the co-founder and CTO at Cortex. You can email me at ganesh@cortex.io. Thank you so much.